You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Ish with the Relentless Project, and we're back with the Smash series. This is going to be episode 2, and I'm here with the Ashes. And it's going to be a little update, and we're going to have a little conversation, little, life talk. So, thanks for tuning in, and here are the Ashes. Thanks for coming back on. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us and giving us this opportunity.
Anytime,
Thanks, Ish.
brother and sister.
Sister. So, James, last time we talked a bit about multiple myeloma, and a lot of people learned, what it is that you're going through. But I think people want to know a little bit more about who James is.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions of like, you said you do a job, but I don't know what that job is. So we should dive into that a little bit.
Sure. So what do you do currently?
So currently I am a full-time police officer working locally, and I'm an instructor for my department, a couple different disciplines, and I'm on the local cool guy team. Yeah.
And who's your immediate family?
So we got you, my wife, Jess, and we have a stepson, Tyler, and I've got a son from a prior marriage who's almost 20 now, and he's kind of out doing his own thing now.
Okay.
Small family, got 2 little pit bulls and a cat named Pumpkin.
Yes.
Or Waffle, depending on who you are.
Yes. He's the cat of many names. Clearly the alpha predator of the household. More kills than anyone else. We also had chickens, but we had to get rid of them, sadly. So where are you from, James?
So I'm not really from anywhere in particular. Grew up mostly in Northern Illinois. Very low income family. And because of that, we moved a lot. I moved like 18 times before I even left high school. I lived in a few different states. So I don't really have a hometown, but generally Northern Illinois.
Okay. And can you paint a picture of what life was like for you when you were a kid?
I can. That's a book unto itself. But generally speaking, again, very low income family, amazing mother who big heart, always with the best intentions, trying to do the best she could. There were years where she was making $4,000, $5,000 a year. Years where we didn't have hot water or heat in the house, and sometimes we didn't have food. But somehow it was, I didn't go too long without food. I'm still here. I'm still vertical.
What was the longest you ever went without food?
I don't know. Not too long in the big picture of things. We'll get into that in another time, probably.
Okay.
But it was always provided at some point. Amazing mother, big heart. Father figures were typically either drunk or abusive or absent or some combination thereof until my most recent stepdad. He's an awesome guy, but I never gave him a chance because of all the other prior histories. And those combinations of things, whether it was the moving, the poverty situation, or the dynamics with the father figure, it led to a lot of experiences as a kid that I lean on and draw on now for strength.
Okay. And out of high school, what did you do next?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2001. And during my senior year, I actually enlisted in the Marine Corps. Don't tell anybody, but I enlisted to be in the band. I was a dork, okay? Total nerd.
Marine Corps band.
The Marine Corps band. I figured, I taught myself the saxophone when I was like 9 years old. And I figured I can't really afford college. And I didn't do well enough in school to get a good scholarship. I let life circumstances derail my studies. And I figured, if I'm going to go to learn music, or that was all I really knew at the time, I thought that's all I was good at, I'm going to have the Marine Corps pay me to do it. And then they'll give me college money. So I thought, this is cool. And the Marine Corps sounded like the hardest and the toughest. I was like, yeah, I'm going to try that. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps during my senior year in high school. And my ship date to go to boot camp just so happened to be exactly 1 week after 9/11. And I was open contract. And so I had a extra spicy little boot camp experience.
I can only imagine. And so after boot camp, did you go on to be in the band?
I did not. So I totally flopped my band audition prior to going to boot camp. So that's why I was open contract. So I got selected to be military police, as that's what the Marine Corps needed. And I went on to be K9 in the military police my first 4 years. I started teaching the Marine Corps martial arts program around 2004. So just a couple years in. And so I was served from 01 to 05, got out in 05, and then I got recalled back into service for Operation Iraqi Freedom, the surge to Fallujah in that area from 07 through 08.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that you were teaching combatives in the Marine Corps. So what has been your journey regarding combatives?
That's a good question. So the journey started before that. It probably started when I was a kid. Seeing the violence in the home, seeing the violence in Chicago, and kind of giving me a drive to figure out how to protect myself and protect others better. My family, my sister. So I started wrestling in 7th grade in high school. I wrestled through high school, became the captain of the team by the end. You get beat up enough, you learn a few things. I had a terrible coach, but I learned through pain and suffering, and I did okay, nothing amazing. So then once in the Marine Corps, I started teaching there. I just got a passion for teaching and helping others. And there's a few more little stories about this journey related to things that happened in my family that really locked it in as what I would call like a calling. But essentially, it's been my passion since then.
Okay. And you said to me at some point that you've had a lot of experiences that have led people to tell you, dude, you should write a book about this. So is that what you recall?
Yeah. So when I let people into those stories in my life, whether it be my first memory as a kid, or some of the poverty, or some of the how did you make it winters without heat and hot water? Like you share those kinds of things, and people are like, man, you should write a book. So that has happened more times than I can count. But I don't see myself as special or unique. I look at my circumstances and I look at what else happens in the world, and it's like, this isn't really that big of a deal.
But here we are.
But here we are.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that that people can garner something from my experiences, and yeah.
So I think after we go through who we are, the intention would be to have some type of a story, a backstory that has a lesson that we've learned, and share that with everybody. But first, I have a very important question. For those who don't know,
Sure.
Why are you called Smash?
That's a good question. Ish might not know this one either, actually. And so this is called, Relentless Project with Smash and the Smash family, and a lot of people
Smash series,
or Team Smash, and a lot of people call us, Smash, and have no idea why. So here's a little bit of the background on that. So again, I was teaching combatives. I've taught for multiple different police departments, different places I've worked. And one of the places I was working, everyone called me Ash, right? So just an easy way of addressing me. And one of my students, after a particularly hard training session, said something like, "Sergeant Ash? No way, it's more like Sergeant Smash." And it just stuck. The rest of the guys I worked with just started calling me Smash instead of Ash. And so the nickname became.
And I've somehow acquired that.
No, you have not acquired that. You have earned that. You don't simply acquire the
Smash title.
The Smash title. It's something that is earned.
It is earned.
So
never given.
That's a little bit about me. People want to know about you too. You talked a lot of fancy medical talk on the last one. And you have your own kind of parallel but unique background too. So show me or give me a little bit of a picture of what that looks like.
Okay, so I also grew up in poverty by American standards, which means we didn't have money for clothes or shoes, but we did have, we had food at least because we used welfare. So I had, that glorious government cheese and lunch tickets. But we grew up in poverty. My father, when he was around, was clearly a sociopath. And we were always surrounded by addicts. So a lot of my early experiences, some of them were great, but a lot of them were of the type you might imagine, being surrounded by addicts. We moved 11 times before I was 10 years old. And I remember when I turned 11, my mother was so excited because we finally were able to get into a real housing project instead of living in these rundown buildings that I think almost every one of them was condemned and torn down shortly after we left. So we struggled a bit when I was really young. When I was in second grade, I remember for school we had to say what we wanted to be when we grow up. And I said I wanted to be a scientist. And my mother laughed at me and said, "If you think you're going to go to college, you better get a scholarship because we can't afford it."
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, then that's what I'll do. So from the age of 7, I thought I need to get a scholarship and go to college. And that's pretty much all I knew.
So you were already thinking about that at second grade? Like that was like your path?
Yes. Same year I learned how to ride a bike. I was thinking I needed to somehow get a scholarship, but I wasn't quite sure how that worked. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. For a lot of kids who grow up in this type of situation, often, if they turn out well, there was some coach or teacher or uncle or someone who had some positive impact in their life. And for me, I had a couple of aunts who were that person. And I also had a few teachers, even in elementary school. There's always some teacher who saw potential in me. And I think I craved that attention. Yeah. And so I did very well at school. And then in high school, I was in 10th grade, the middle of 10th grade. And my counselor told me that I was currently number 3 in the class. And so I was pissed.
Why were you pissed being number 3?
Because I wasn't number 1. And so I'm like, okay, then what do I need to do to be number 1? And he's like, oh, no, Jess. This is like moving the Titanic. This is a 4-year average of your GPA. You can't really move up or down. You're pretty locked in.
So he told you can't?
He told me I can't. And I was really pissed. And so I, at that point, decided no matter what, I was going to be number 1. And so instead of just cruising through high school, I started to break it down to every test, every day, every hour, what I needed to do to get like the highest GPA. And I did that relentlessly every day. And then by the middle of 12th grade, that same counselor came to me and he like sheepishly walks up and he's like, "You did it, hot dog." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're number one." So I was valedictorian. I did get a full ride academic scholarship, and that was how I ultimately came to be a physician assistant.
And what college did you go to?
Duquesne University. It's a private Catholic university in Pittsburgh.
And that was probably really easy and just a walk in the park.
No, I was so underprepared. So to paint the picture, I grew up in the McKees Rocks Bottoms, which is it's an impoverished neighborhood that was previously dominated by blue-collar workers that just became more and more impoverished. Currently, it is either number one or number two in murder rate for towns outside of the cities of Pittsburgh or Philly in terms of, murder rates in a town. And, when I was growing up, though, there were shootings and stuff, but not like it is today. When I was growing up, there was just a lot of street fights. Like, I was in so many street fights before I hit puberty. It was just, I didn't know that was unusual for a girl until I got to college and realized that I didn't know anyone else who had ever been in a street fight, which was very bizarre to me.
So you're not just this polished physician assistant that somehow stumbled their way through school. And,
I got a silver spoon, man.
Right. So
it's plastic. I stole it from the Walmart.
The title of Smash you've earned, right? So your exposure to personal protection, to fighting, to violence, it's not just through like cool classes that you sign up for on the weekend. There's this whole backstory of, bullies and fights through school and other things in life too.
Sure. I probably present myself as polished, professional. Most people that I work with have absolutely no idea where I have come from. I remember one cardiology fellow saying, "You like Metallica? I pegged you for Shania Twain." So what that means is part of my survival technique was reinventing myself and being a chameleon into whatever the situation required. Mm-hmm. And so in my professional life, I often project basically what the people around me are projecting. Mm-hmm. And so it helps me talk to them. It helps them accept who I am. And it's really just a result of that survival technique. In terms of combatives, I was in a lot of street fights. Probably after 13 years old, not so many street fights anymore. And that was largely because I had beat up a bully. And
you were kind of like the defender of the nerds.
Somehow, I don't know how that happened, but I got a little bit of a reputation after I beat up that bully. In fact, it was funny. I beat her up in the girls' bathroom. 20 years later, I reconnected with someone from high school who was saying, "Oh, I remember when you beat that girl up." He's like, "I heard all about it. You were sticking her head in the toilet and flushing it. And he told me all these things that I did." And I'm like, "I didn't do any of that." But like the rumorville had taken off. And so I kind of got this reputation. When I was older, I also made some poor choices and eventually did become a victim of domestic violence. And, I eventually got out of that situation. But it took a very deliberate mindset to choose not to live as a victim. I had been victimized, but I wasn't going to live as a victim. I wasn't going to let that person have residence in my headspace. And I wasn't going to move on in my life making more bad decisions that are just a reaction to whatever, post-traumatic kind of stuff I had from that. So I have had a number of things that have made me very passionate about, personal protection. And, fast forward years later, I love teaching, especially women, how to prevent being victimized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have a very compelling story. And what's amazing is that you demonstrate this strength that is, it's earned. It's not given. You can tell when someone has overcome something and they have found their own strength. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to see that. It's very powerful.
Thank you. So we had decided that we would tell a story in each of these podcasts, and what is that lesson that we learned from that? And it's now March, and March has a few anniversaries for you. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Sure. So, a few awesome things and a few terrible things have happened in March. Our 5th wedding anniversary is coming up in a couple weeks. So, our wedding anniversary is March. We'll call that a plus.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, it's pretty awesome. My gramps was kind of like my father figure to me, and March was the month that he passed in 2007. And March has another anniversary that is it's kind of tough, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, and I'll pause for a second. I'm really sleep deprived, and this is kind of an emotional thing, so I'm probably going to choke up a little bit, but that's all right.
It's okay.
So when I was 8 years old in 1990,
Baby.
yeah, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And in 1990, it was me and my sister, and my mom gave birth to my next brother, Benjamin. He was born March 9th, 1990. And he died March 29th, 1990. So sometimes it's a hard month.
Tell me, what was that like for you when you were 8 years old?
It was kind of wild because someone is doing their yard outside. We're going to ignore that and just keep on going. It's time to weed whack and mow yards. All right, let's just press on.
All right.
So I actually had this wild dream that something had happened to my brother. Now, he had like sniffles and a little cold, like the first couple weeks he's around. He got checked on. Doctor said there's nothing really wrong. It's just, part of welcome to the world. There's germs out there. You might get a cold. But I had this dream that something terrible had happened, and I woke up like crying from this nightmare. And it was maybe 30 seconds later or a minute later, I heard this blood-curdling scream come from my mom and my stepdad's room. And I ran down the hallway and I found my stepdad trying CPR on Ben. And even as an 8-year-old, I remember seeing him and realizing it was too late. He'd been gone for a while. And he had passed from SIDS sometime in the middle of the night. But the impact of that moment is both deep and broad. I wouldn't say it has any one specific impulse on me, but it was far-reaching, and it wrecked my mom for decades.
What were some of the thoughts you had when you were 8?
So I remember when my mom was pregnant with Ben, she had me come over and put my hand on her stomach, and I'd feel him moving, and my thoughts were like, so I grew up kind of like very religious, right? And so I was familiar with this concept of God and Jesus and things like this, and my thoughts were, why would God allow a mother to nurture and grow a child for 9 months, get connected to it, and have that deep intimacy, and and have these little kids, me being 8 and my sister being 6, just barely get to know this infant less than 3 weeks and take it back from the world. Why? What kind of person, what kind of world and universe is that fair? What's the reason behind that? Like, what on earth could the purpose behind this be? Why would you do that to a family? And why would you allow this 8-year-old to walk in and see on display his little brother and stepdad working on him? Like, it was horrendous. And in what world is that fair? And
In what world is that fair?
yeah. And so that was my thought as a kid.
Okay.
And all of the things that we've been through, I've come to have a little bit of a different perspective. I believe that everything that happens does have a purpose. I believe that everything happens does have a reason. But I know that not everything's fair. And those purposes and those reasons, we may never get the privilege to see. And it may not even be about me, or even my mom. After this happened, she had the privilege of being able to speak with other parents and other moms who had lost kids. And, who knows if her speaking to someone, reaching out and touching their heart, maybe prevented that parent from taking their own life, or had some other consequence. Or maybe if Ben had lived and been around, maybe his life would have been more torture. Maybe this was a grace. Maybe this was a kindness.
So,
but what I know is it's not fair.
okay. And then as an adult, this concept of fairness, how else did this present itself? You had mentioned to me that when you were in Iraq, it kind of changed your view.
Yeah. So again, been through a lot of weird shit in life, right? Things have been really hard. And if I look back on things, a lot of it doesn't look fair. And growing up, I had kind of at times a juvenile perspective of woe is me, or poor me, or, I've been through these things, and, kind of a victim-minded perspective, really. And, when I went to Iraq, I see these kids who are running around like irrigation ditches with their homemade sandals made of like old recycled tires and Pepsi bottles. And man, they are happy as can be. Not a care in the world. They go back to their homes, which, by the way, are like handmade houses made of brick and mud from the local like riverbank. And they don't care. Happy as can be. And it really changed my perspective and my perception of life, really, but of what is fair. Like, I could look at them, or they could look at me and be like, hey, look at that guy from America. This isn't fair. Right. Or, we look at, folks born into poverty in Africa, or in other places of the world, and your experience in, with the Porters and the trips that you've been on. It's not fair.
So you have this concept that it's not fair. How do you take that concept and turn it so that it's not locking you into this victim mindset?
Yeah. And so that's the trick, is recognizing and acknowledging that you're right. It's not fair. So what? But the victim-minded perspective of saying, why? Mm-hmm. Why me?
Right.
That's where things get twisted. That's where things get hard to manage. And that's what I think pulls a lot of people into this very self-centered, victim-minded perspective.
I know for myself, I kind of had defined myself as somebody who was overcoming challenges, and I took pride in it.
Yeah.
But I still sometimes fell into that, why me victim mindset. And anytime that I whatever progress I was making was just stuffed. Like it would wreck whatever I was doing. But I still kind of held on to that quite a bit. And about 12 years ago, I was fortunate to do this big awareness and fundraising event, which was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. And me and a few doctors did that to give ourselves the same disease that our patients have, which you get from high altitude. Although ours went away when we came back down off the mountain. Sure. The mountain's its own big story. But while I was there, that was my first time for me being in a third world country. You at least had been in Chicago, which is its own
close enough.
First third world country. So while there was a guide who was very helpful and motivating to me to get me to the top of the mountain. But the whole time we were there, his hand, he had like a handkerchief that he always had. And we didn't really pay much mind to it. When it was all over, after we had summited, we came back down. We had a night where we could celebrate. Me and a few of the doctors wanted to take out a few of the assistant guides who were really, helpful to us. So we took them out for a beer, and we saw his hand on the table for the first time. And he had this horrible, brewing, nasty infection on the back of his hand that clearly needed antibiotics and surgical debridement. And so we started to ask him, what happened? And he said, well, I was walking home from work because they don't have vehicles. He had a great job being able to be an assistant guide, but no vehicle. So he's walking on the road. He got hit by a car and fell in a ditch. So what does that mean? There are no lawyers or insurance companies or anyone to sue. Mm-hmm. And he had no healthcare facility to go to address his injured hand. And so when he would come to work on these trips up the mountain, he had to hide his injury, because if his bosses had seen that he had such a significant injury on his hand, they would have fired him. And he was the only person in his entire family that was working. So he had to hide his injury and just live with it. So, and we had supplies with us, and we gave him antibiotics, and we helped him in every way that we could. But it was my experience where I really started to see, like, wow, I had welfare. I had Medicaid that gave me health insurance. Mm-hmm. I had school and a lunch program and a housing project that gave me heat. In fact, they controlled the heat, so we had to open windows in winter because it would be so hot. But how fortunate was I?
Right.
Who am I to say I was a victim, or exactly, I was poor, or I was, in any way less than? And so it really humbled me and altered the way I view the world, and made me acknowledge just how fortunate we all are in our own way. So now taking that back to now, you have this diagnosis, you're 41, you're told you have a terminal cancer, and what is that doing to you? Do you ever think that this isn't fair?
Yes, that it's fair, but again, what does that matter? What does fair matter? we look back on these different experiences that we've had, we can find purpose in them. We can find some thing there that can give that experience quality of some kind.
So you're looking for, you find a purpose or a silver lining or meaning behind everything.
Meaning behind something.
Okay.
So like with my brother that passed, Ben, I had the privilege of being a big brother for almost 3 weeks to a little brother, right? I had the privilege of seeing what it's like when my mom is pregnant. I don't remember that when my sister was a baby. So I have found that gratitude is the antidote for victim-mindedness and finding reason and purpose. And then also having faith that even if we don't see what that reason is or what that purpose is, there is one. And that's harder, right? So like with the cancer thing, I don't know what the reason is or what the purpose is. And fairness is irrelevant. Fairness is a perspective of victim-mindedness. That's all that is. They're to me, they're equal. And to acknowledge that fairness is irrelevant, I think is critical. Yeah, it's not fair. So what?
I didn't realize that this is an unusual perspective until we recently went and met with a pastor.
Yeah, so we're checking out different churches, maybe looking for a church home, and I have a lot of scar tissue around religion and churches and things like that. So we wanted to sit down and meet with this guy to kind of feel him out, give him the sniff test, like, is this legit or is this another one of those other places that I'm used to? And so when we're talking to him, we explained what was going on.
Well, he
Oh
knew,
yeah, he knew ahead of time.
He knew ahead of time
Yeah.
because we had an acquaintance who actually reached out to us and said, "Hey,
That's
I
right,
think
set
it
up
would.
the meeting.
I think it would be helpful if you met with this pastor." And so he knew the story
That's
before
right.
we got there.
That's right. I'm a little foggy right now. Sleep deprivation's kind of hitting me a little bit. But yeah, so
chemotherapy and yeah.
So he knew the story ahead of time, and what he was expecting was this young, healthy family to come in and be angry at God,
Right.
or ask the questions: why me? What did I do to deserve this? All of those very primal, natural responses that I think most people have, and in fact, tickle our brains too sometimes. right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes our response, I'll get into our response in a minute, but those same questions, right? Mm-hmm. And he was expecting that, and he was totally taken aback that we weren't like challenging his faith or challenging the concept of God or those things. We really just wanted to see what the church was like and to see if it was a good fit.
Right. But that experience kind of shed light on the fact that our response was a little unusual. Yeah. But we do on occasion have these moments, we both do, where it tickles your mind. Why me?
Yeah.
This isn't fair. So what do you do when that starts to tickle your mind?
So this is not the first hard thing that you and I have had to deal with. And I count that as a blessing because we have had lots of practice facing really, really hard things in our lives and finding ways to work through them. If this was the first truly hard thing that we had ever had to deal with, I think it would probably crush us. It would be debilitating. And
So, but I want to know what happens in your mind when these thoughts are, when you tell yourself with your internal script, this isn't fair. My life has been finally going great. This isn't fair. How do you, regardless of if you've had practice or not, how do you take that thought and turn it around and put it in check?
It's a good question. I can kind of feel those tendrils of despair and those tendrils of depression, like working up and like trying to wrap themselves around my legs and pull me down. And honestly, there's days now where I just don't want to even get out of bed. You know, it hits me sometimes, and it's hard. It's not easy. And I portray this strength, but it's not always strength. Sometimes it's very, very hard. But what I do is this. I lean back on those other hard lessons, and I tell myself, find something to be thankful for and grateful for. I'm grateful now that I kind of have a timeline. And I look at that as a blessing, because now I can make each moment of high value. I can not waste my time worrying about things that don't need to be worried about. I can disregard the nonsense and not be stressed about the things I can't control, because I don't have time for that. So it's given me a filter to manage my heart better. So I find things to be grateful for. And then purpose and reason. Man, I don't know what the purpose is for this. I don't know what the reason is for this.
And we may never know.
And we're in a situation where it's a done deal. Like, you know, this thing is this thing, and I can't change that. Medicine may change in time, and there may be a cure, you know, before things are said and done. But as it stands right now, like, you know, we got what we got. We got the cards we've got. But
so what happens is you feel the tendrils. You feel this despair pulling at you, and you actively seek out, what can I be grateful for?
Yeah, so two things. What can I be grateful for? And then the reason. And so I don't know the reason, but I know that there is a reason. Just like
so you have
with
faith
my mom,
that there is a reason.
Just like with my mom reaching out to the other parents, you know, maybe there are these other side effects, these other things that happen. Maybe the reason for this is maybe Tyler needs to see how we manage it.
Right.
Maybe someone watching this in 5 or 10 years needs to hear something. I don't know. But I have to have faith that there is a reason, and that my Gramps is watching. Like, how is this guy going to handle this? That my brother's watching. How's this guy going to handle this? So I have a host of people watching and studying and learning from how we handle this. So the purpose might not be about me or us. It may be much bigger than us. I don't know. But I have to have faith that there is a purpose. And that gives me hope.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
With that. You have there's a saying that we have started to say since we were dating, since we first started dating. Some people, when they have these like pleasantries, these mindless pleasantries, like, you know, have a great day, be safe, and, you know,
Be dangerous.
Not be safe, be dangerous. Our statement was, make today great.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
we can let life happen to us. And maybe you can have a great day, maybe you don't. That's a passive perspective and a passive approach. We know that that's not always the case. We know that we can't control the things that happen to us in our lives. We can't control what happens to us day to day. I can't control the calls I go on as a police officer. What we can control is how we respond to those things. We can control our mindset and our internal dialogue. And that is how we can make each day great. It sometimes takes a significant effort to make the day great. But that is something we have in our control. And so my intent behind that is to be deliberate, to take control of your day and to make it great. If you're not having a great day, it's your fault.
We even made this part of our wedding vows.
Yeah.
So at this juncture, I think you wanted to make a quick call out to a foundation.
Yeah. So this week we had this really awesome gathering over at a local place called Jurgles. There's a foundation called It's About the Warrior Foundation. And they did a huge fundraiser for one of my teammates and one of the guys I serve with on our local Cool Guy team who's battling cancer. And he's having a really hard time with it right now, a really hard time. And so It's About the Warrior Foundation did a massive fundraiser for him and his family. So I want you guys to go check them out, support them if you can. I'll have Ish put some links and stuff in the things underneath. It's how you do it for
the things.
Yeah. I'm new to this.
He's just back there pushing buttons.
Yeah. So check them out. They're doing amazing things. And so each time we get together, we'll do a little call out or do a little like action step at the end. But for this week, check them out, support them, find their Facebook and their Instagram and their things and go follow them. Awesome folks, and they're doing great things for our community.
So I think that's it.
Yeah. So Ish?
If I may, you guys hit on a lot of things, and it's things I've heard as a believer many times, and I always struggle how to explain it. Psalm 119, 105 talks about, your word is a lamp for my feet, a light for my path. So it talks about basically how God has given us the inner beings of being curious. We're curious beings. We want to know things. And the downside of that is God is one of those things we can never know of. We can never know fully or understand, because if we could know God, know his intentions, know everything about him, and we can put him in a box, he would serve no purpose for us. If we could completely understand him, why would he be God? So the beauty of this verse is, how do you get to know someone? How do you get to know something? You study it. You develop a relationship with it. You lean closer to it. And I think a lot of what's been happening in our world is people want to understand God and question God, but they never take the time to try to get to know him and lean in on him. And there's a lot. I grew up scarred from church myself. Recently started going back a couple years ago. And the more you lean into trying to understand who God is, why God is, the more answers you'll get. The more, and that faith word is tough, because especially people like us, like, we want to control what we can control. Because if I can control it, it's safe, because I trust myself. Now I'm trusting something and someone I don't fully understand. And that's the big faith word. So I think you guys hit the nail on the head, and I just wanted to like double down on that, in the sense of we may not know why things are happening. We can only continue to do what we can do, play the cards we've been handed, and put the rest up to faith. And that's not a escape or a easy way out. That's actually the harder thing. Like, I'm going to continue to do the work that's necessary based off the understanding I have now and just put the rest to God. But that doesn't mean we get to just step back and be like, oh, it's in God's. No, we have to do the work, and God will pull good from anything if we allow him to. That's the big thing. If we allow him to. If we're going to have that victim mentality of this isn't fair, this sucks, I'm just going to, like, God is going to take what you give him and amplify it. If we aren't giving him anything, it's like parents, and this is the best way to describe their relationships, like parents with their kids. Parents want the best for their kids. Sometimes the kids don't understand that. I hate my parents, or why they're unfair. They won't let me go outside at this time. There's going to be a thunderstorm, or you don't have to explain this to your kids, but they're hard-headed and they want all the answers. And you're just like, sometimes you don't need the answers. You just need to listen to what I'm saying. But they want no business in that. That's the best way to describe. Like, God is our Father. We are the children. We have to trust our parents, but we have to do the work that our parents require us to do. So I don't know. I was called. I felt something and wanted to say that. Both these stories, like, so many things can be pulled. So many lessons. So many. I was just back here, just like, wow. Didn't even know why you were called Smash. Now I know. So a lot of good stuff.
So next time we get together, we'll have another story. We'll have another thing that one of us have been through, and kind of like this, we'll relate it to, some kind of lesson, like, tie it back into what's going on nowadays, or just something that's helped us through life.
That's going to be extremely beneficial. I've had a lot of feedback from the first episode. I mean, it got us, people already reaching out how to help or how to be a part of this and how to help others. And that's the crazy thing about this story, right? I have a friend whose husband passed away because of cancer, and she felt inclined to push the buck forward. And she's like, I want to, like, can I give him this, please? Like, for the family, his episode inspired, like, I want to help others now. I was in this position of like, what do I do? But like, now I know his story doesn't go in vain, because you can always,
like, pay it forward.
Pay it forward. That's the word I was looking, pay it forward. So, and this is sometimes you need to hear a story or something to be like, or meet someone where you're like, wow, what am I doing? I can be doing so much more. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. I mean, it's helping me. And like, I started looking at biblical, references on things you guys are talking about. And it's crazy. Everything you guys are saying, it's in the good book. So I appreciate you guys for this. I appreciate you guys for coming on.
I appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Hosting us, truly.
Anytime. I appreciate everyone who's listening. Leave comments. Let us know if this is something you guys enjoy and what you enjoy. And just thank you guys for listening. This is the Relentless Project and Smash series with the Smashes.
Team Smash.
Team Smash. All right. Thank you. Later.